Because I feel like one of the things about astrology is it's just the way people perceive it out there is just based off of a lot of misunderstanding, I think, and really just seeing it as this very woo-woo and crystal ball and, forecasting the future. And I mean, I love how you say it's actually really kind of mechanical in a lot of ways. Like you say, I talk about astral mechanics and how it is in a lot of ways very, very rational. And yet, I think it's good to have folks representing the tradition in a way that is validifying to it as a valid approach to working with people and to really just getting them well. I think it's like that's my take that I always like to acknowledge is like it doesn't really matter what system you use to heal someone so long as they just get healed and they get the help that they need, whether you figure it out with Ayurvedic constitutions or TCM or acupuncture or astrological medicine. As long as they get well, that's all that really matters at the end of the day, right?
Yes, and we have been hogtied by the prejudice and mystery and glamour surrounding this word astrology. If we called it cosmos biology, it would not have this prejudice. Most people who have this idea that astrologers are sitting there, they're all nuts and they're sitting there with a crystal ball, they have no idea what genuine astrology even is. No idea at all. In fact, all of the first uses of astrology were very practical, not psychological. They didn't have time to be wondering about their childhood problems in those days. Most people beget by 30 or 40. And so, the psychological twist that astrology took is very useful, very good, but it completely took over the field because of the vagrancy laws. So Alan Leo was arrested twice around 1900 to 1911, put in jail once. He was the world astrologer at that time, the big name in England. And he told all of because the vagrancy laws made astrology illegal. And astrology is still illegal in 3 states of the United States, I should have you know.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Huh.
Was illegal in my state till 1986, state I was working in. And they were dragged off to prison occasionally under the vagrancy laws that were here too. So Alan Leo told everybody during the era where Jung and Freud, the early 1900s, were coming out with their seminal works, he instructed all of his followers to start doing these sort of psychological consultations and that they would escape the vagrancy laws. And this took off like a shot. People don't need to go through psychology school. They can now do all these readings. And in this pursuit, which has borne a lot of fruit and been very good and helpful to many people, and a lot of psychologists are astrologers now. But a lot of the earliest uses, medical astrology is one of the very first uses of astrology. So were electional astrology, many other uses. They got the practical branches. They rather got forgotten. They never went away, but they got really pushed under the carpet. So that when I was studying and coming up, I would have to go hunting all over town to find, one book on vocational astrology or one book on medical astrology. And to be able to use this as a practical craft, because I was surrounded by all these blue collar men when I grew up, all had great skills, and I wanted a skill. And so this is a real skill, and you learn to weave the planetary rays and, pull the rigging this way, and you watch it working. We don't all know how it works. There's wonderful theories and experiments afoot and research, but it does work. We didn't know all why electricity works before we saw lightning. Or we didn't know what air was, but we could all breathe.
See, I love that you're mentioning that, because that's a point that I'm making all the time. I hear a lot of folks that are very more rational, reductionistic, scientific in their approach. And their whole thing is like, oh, well, astrology is just a pseudoscience. And well, there's no scientific proof of it. We don't know how it works. And that's kind of the argument that's made. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, we all have this like supercomputer in our pockets and purses these days. Does anybody really know how it works? Like, no, we don't know how those iPhones work, but they work and you trust in it. Most people do, right? It's like, maybe we probably shouldn't so much, but you know what I mean? It's like, there's so many things that we take for granted that we use. We don't believe in it because it's just there and it works. And I think astrology is when people say, oh, I don't believe in astrology. It's like, well, it doesn't require your belief. It's like, do you believe in your electricity? It's like, no, like you say, it just works. And I feel like astrology is kind of the same way. So I feel like that word belief kind of comes in, and I'm like, oh, I don't really know if belief should even really be a part of the conversation about it. It's just whether you understand it or not.
Yeah, Sajah, that's so true. And I don't like letting people get away with this statement that there is no proof of astrology anymore. There are many studies that show that signs and planets and moon phases have effects here on Earth in various ways. I spent 10 years in the research of astrology. We got lots of positive results. I also went up for a skeptics exam, and I was able to match 5 charts against 5 biographies. And I could do it again. I'm busy now. I've been putting in for tests like this several times. And, let's construct some. There's lots of really good evidence that there are some mysterious influences. And I have personally known 2 scientists, Earl Payne and Arthur Young, who spent a lot of time investigating some of these influences, especially Earl Payne. And his studies are amazing. So we need more studies, but as many studies that show positive results, they just get ignored, and the skeptics keep parroting that there's no proof of astrology. Well, that's just not true. So let's saying that and say, maybe we need more studies, but there are studies that show something is working. Something's can't say it's not true anymore.
Totally. I mean, I always like to make the argument of, well, let's see, it's been used cross-culturally all over the world for how many thousands of years? It wouldn't have stuck around this long if it didn't work. I mean, especially as you're talking about, the original uses were very pragmatic, very practical. It wasn't this excessively psychological or esoteric or spiritual kind of, it was like very practical. And if you have a tool that you use for a practical reason, if you keep using it and it doesn't work, you will discard that tool. But if you use it and it works, you're going to keep using it. So I always like to say, I think it's still around because, well, it works. Dang it. That's a wonderful argument that people would have. Some of these very intelligent geniuses wouldn't have used it if it didn't work. And we also can use the same. We use the same argument in courts. If you have 50 people file in and say they saw somebody shoot somebody, even though they can't find the guy or they can't find the gun, that is taken as a certain body of evidence, because it's so overwhelming. And so, there is an overwhelming body of evidence that something about astrology works, and that the sun affects us, that the moon influences us. How could they not? And, I've always noticed that the extreme skeptics who I have had conversations with, I'll say, well, how long have you studied astrology? Sir, it's almost always a man, sir. And they will say, I haven't. I don't need to. So I'll say, well, I'm very skeptical, by the way. I'm extremely skeptical on many things. And so I'll say, well, go and study for 2 years, enough to be able to read. Then come back and we'll have a discussion. And if you still find it doesn't work, your opinion will be respected. Would you debate if physics works with someone who doesn't have a clue about physics? Exactly. That's a really great, that's such a great, I'm going to use that one from now on. That's really good. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. It's like, how can you make an argument for something if you literally have no remote understanding of it at all whatsoever? I mean, you wouldn't argue. Yeah. You're not going to get into an argument with an astrophysicist if you have no understanding of it.